All right, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for coming today. We are going to, I'm not going to ask you again, as always, how you're doing, because I know you're not doing great. That's why you're here, but everything's going to be okay. Today, we're going to do a little more of a practical reviewing some questions to give you some tips, strategies, approach to hopefully reduce some of those silly reading mistakes that a lot of you guys are making. I get tons of messages and calls. Even if I know the law, John, I'm still getting it down to two, second guessing myself, picking the other answer, all of that stuff. You know what I'm talking about. Hopefully you listened to what we discussed a couple of weeks ago, spent a little more time the first couple of weeks focusing more on your attention and comfort with the law. So now, as you may be getting ready for your simulated exams, if you're taking a bar course or you're finishing your own review of the 7 MBE topics, you want to get to July, as we talked about, and be in more practice mode. So want to help you be more a little efficient on how you're reading the questions, reduce the mistakes, talk over approach using a couple of sample questions just to give you an idea of what's going on. Okay. First, let's talk a little bit about approach. Okay. Everybody knows you got the facts, you got the call, you got the answer choices. Most of you were taught, told instinctively, read something. Hey, look at the call, the question first. I don't have any problem. Okay. People say John says, I know John, I know what I say. I don't have any problem if you look at the call. What I want you to be thinking about, though, now is let's do torts. Okay. For a second, just stay with me. Tort question. John sues Bob for his damages for his broken leg. Will he prevail? That's the call. Doesn't tell you the name of the tort. Every evidence question says, is the statement admissible? You know it's evidence, but that doesn't tell you if it's character impeachment or the best evidence rule. Con law, is the statute constitutional? Who knows? So many of the questions, the calls, you would be able to identify the topic, but not the particular rule. If you look at the call and it doesn't really tell you a particular rule, where's the next place you tend to go? The answer choices. Let me see what they gave me. But now what's happening? You're literally going into the answers and looking for something, but you don't know what you're looking for. You're just going to read all four, but how many issues, how many rules are they testing you on per question? One. How many answers are there? So why do you want to be putting four concepts, four ideas, four arguments in your head if they're only testing you on one thing? You with me? So when you say, if John, will John prevail? A lot of people like to say, I get it down to the right conclusion. Yes, yes, guilty, guilty, etc., etc. This is the worst mistake you could be making because by definition, if you're just focusing on the conclusion, you don't know what issue is, and that's why you can't tell the difference between the two that come to the same conclusion. So are you saying I shouldn't look at the call, John? I didn't say that. I said, if you look at the call, where's the worst place you could look right now? The answer choices. Go back to the facts. The fact pattern is the most important part of every single MBE question, and it's the most neglected. People skim, they read too fast, they're trying to finish. How many times have you missed a question where you went back and looked at the explanation? Oh, yeah, if I just spent 5 more seconds, it would have been, oh, it was the man, not the friend. Ugh, that was just silly. I should see that. The reason you're not seeing it is because you're not focusing on it. That's why they give you the fact pattern first. They're trying to push you to the most important place. So if you like to look at the call, that's what you do. You've been doing it a long time and you're comfortable. God bless you. But go from the call back to the facts. Crim law is the opposite. Many crim law questions, as you know, say, if charged with murder, will John be guilty? If charged with burglary, will John be guilty? They give you the name of the crime. Why? Now I know, John. That's right. But if the question says, if charged with burglary, will John be guilty? While you now know it's a burglary question, you don't know whether I'm guilty or not. And since there's two guilties and two not guilty answers, once again, if you go into the answers before you know, you're looking at four answers and have no idea what you're looking for. How will you know whether I'm guilty? The facts will tell you. Everything is about the fact pattern. So, call the question, go back to the facts. If you're that person that's very frustrated with multiple choice, having a problem, just constantly second guessing yourself, You may want to try to focus on the facts first, then get to the call, because many, many times, if you know what the facts are about, you'll already know what you're looking for. So when the question says, John sues Bob for his damages, will he prevail? John sues Bob for breach of contract, will he prevail? If you already know that the whole fact pattern is about third party or assignment or negligence or battery, the call, you don't need any help in that because you already know what the issue is about. And now you know what you're looking for. You with me? The facts give you all this information, whether it tells you the name of the rule or it doesn't tell you the name of the rule. You got to know that from the fact pattern. And once you identify the issue in the facts, now you know what you're looking for. Then many people, because they're going too fast, they're not comfortable about which answer to choose, etc., they skim the answers and then have to go back and reread. My mantra is when you read the answer choices, these are my words, do it any way it's comfortable for you. I like to say, what is each answer about? Each answer choice has buzzwords, phrases, legalese, either legalese or in plain English, that tell you what each answer is about. So even if you did, quote, get it down to two, yes, yes, guilty, guilty, the two that come to the same conclusion are never talking about the same tort, the same crime. You with me? So if I know I'm doing a battery question, what's the rule for MBE that no one talks about? The answer you pick must, shall, and is required to only be about the battery. You're doing a negligence question, you better pick why I am or I'm not liable for negligence. You're doing a murder question, you better pick an answer about murder. Impeachment, you better pick, you get my point. The other answer that comes to the same conclusion will always be referring to a different crime, a different tort, a different contract issue. That's what you want to think about. Most people are taught to, there's three good answers, let's find the best one. No, there's one correct answer, and it's correct because it's the most specific to the facts. You're basically playing a game of connect the dots. That's the issue. John is liable. He's liable because it told me. That's the answer that says so. Now, as you also know, sometimes a lot of you get overemphasizing the buzzwords in the answer. You do a strict liability question that says abnormally dangerous activity. You like the answer that matches your flashcard. But a lot of times on the real bar exam, the correct answer is just written in what I call plain English, just basically restating what the facts say. So the other lesson today is don't assume that every single answer choice has to be the definition per se. Sometimes they're baiting you with the other answers that include the legalese, and the correct answer is just written in plain English. That's why you need the facts, because you'll know what those words mean and why it's important based on what the facts say. Reading comprehension. People say to me, I'm not really good at reading comp, John. Of course you are. That's how you got through law school, for God's sakes. You're just spending the time incorrectly on where you're doing a lot of your reading comprehension. And a lot of the reading comprehension you're doing is overly focused on the answers, not where the facts are or what the facts are talking about. You with me? So again, slow down in the facts in the call in any order that's comfortable for you. But when you go into the answers, you want to know what you're looking for. Then you're asking, what is each answer about? So you mean, John, if I know I'm doing a larceny question, but I like burglary better, I can't pick it. Right. If you're doing an impeachment question, but I've got a good character definition, I can't pick that. Right. That's why hundreds of answer choices on the bar, hundreds of them, are legally and factually true. There's nothing wrong with them. That's why you like them. The reason they're not the correct answer is because they have nothing to do with the issue. There's a difference between an answer choice that legally is true, but has nothing to do with the issue and the facts. That's what they're doing to you. They're kind of playing your strength in law school because on essay, you would be arguing three or four different things. That's the whole point. On MBE, you're reducing it down to its bare bones single issue. Many times, you will disagree with the conclusion the question comes to. I agree with you. That's a stupid answer. What does John say? Shut up and pick it anyway, because that's the most specific answer. So remember, this is not legal reasoning. This is not legal analysis. You're arguing on an essay, but on MBE, these are little puzzles. Many times the answer doesn't make sense. Many times you disagree, shut up and pick it anyway, if that's the most specific answer to what the facts are talking about. Sometimes they'll give you the legalese, sometimes it's in plain English. That's the whole point. Don't jump for the first good looking buzzword. And that's also where I say now, this time of year, moving into July, as you pile up the practice, everyone's dying to do more practice questions. That's good. The problem with doing too many practice questions too quickly is that you in any program that you're doing, eventually all the hypos begin to look the same. Sometimes they're repeating the same derivative hypo, but changing it ever so slightly. And these are the pattern people who say, every time I see this, I pick that. But then they don't talk about the next 3 days when they're wrong. Why was it correct on Monday and wrong on Tuesday? Because on Monday they gave you the definitional buzzwordy answer, but on Tuesday they used plain English. On Monday, it was guilty, but on Tuesday, it was not guilty. Why? Because although it was the same derivative story, now they changed the facts ever so slightly. As you segue into July and are doing more and more practice, you want to focus your time more on the reading comp. I'm telling you that they're making a lot of the hypos look the same, but they're just changing the facts ever so slightly and the wording in the answers ever so slightly. Many of your practice tests from your bar courses, people tell me, hey, John, I knew the law, but man, those answers didn't look like what I was practicing on. Exactly. They're trying to, quote, toughen you up for what the real bar is going to look like. So, again, sometimes the buzzword, not all the time the buzzword. That's why in your head, that little voice has to be asking, what is each answer talking about? And why are the other answers wrong? Even if I know John wins, it's constitutional, John will prevail, it's admissible. The two that come to the same conclusion are never discussing the same issue. Don't compare the answers, what I call contrast the answers. What's the difference between the two? And if you can separate, it's easier for you then to go back to the facts and basically say, oh my God, why was I looking at B? That has nothing to do with the question. It's got to be A. You with me? Just plain connect the dots. You won't like it. You won't agree with it. You're going to shut up and pick it. Good? Let's try a couple and see where we go. All right? So we're going to do the first question. I'll give you a couple minutes to read it. Obviously, a tort question, so stay with me for a second. Let's apply what we're trying to talk about, okay? Take a look at the call of the question to this one. Okay? In a suit against the man is in that. So if you looked at that, you wouldn't know anything, right? It's a tort. Will he likely prevail? You with me? You got your two no's and your two yeses. So now if you go into the answers, your brain's going to be thinking about a lot of different things. You don't want to be thinking about a lot. You want to think about the single issue. Don't worry about the answer choices. Read the facts. I'll give you a few minutes and we'll talk. So notice nowhere in the call and nowhere in the facts did it give you the name of any tort. Didn't even tell you what they were suing for. You with me? This is where you have to have that confidence in your ability to do issue spotting and dumbing everything down. What happened here? A dog injured somebody. If I'm doing a tort question and a dog injured somebody, what tort should I be thinking about? Strict liability. There are domestic animals, there are wild animals. Is a domestic animal a wild? No. Can a domestic animal become wild definitionally? Yes. If the domestic animal has, excellent, dangerous propensities. If that's the bad dog, the dangerous dog. Is this a bad dog? Yes. How do I know? The facts told me. Ferocity, ferocious. This is a bad dog. And if they tell me it's a ferocious dog, that makes the dog a wild animal for definitional purposes, which would usually mean there's strict liability. So if you didn't catch that part where it talked about the dog's ferocity, you'd already be in the wrong place. If you ran to the answers before you identified that it was a dog causing an injury, you'd be in the wrong place. Issue. Strict liability normally wouldn't be, but it's a bad dog, so it's strict liability. But is there another wrinkle here? Yes. I teach never pick an answer talking about a defense to a rule or an exception to a rule, except if that's what the facts are talking about. Hundreds of answer choices quote defenses and exceptions. Most of the time they're wrong, even though they're legally true. They're wrong and incorrect because that's not what the facts are talking about. Is this different? What is the single possible legal defense to strict liability? Assumption of the risk. I'm the one always saying, never assume assumption of the risk. Make them tell you, know and appreciate the nature of the risk and do it anyway. Did this idiot know what the hell he was getting himself into? Yeah, he read the sign, knew it was a bad dog, and did he go in there anyway? Yes. Notice how much information they gave you without naming strict liability, wild animal, and assumption of the risk. All plain English. Nowhere in the facts, nowhere in the call did it tell you. This is what I'm talking about. So before I ever look at those answer choices, in here I know it's strict liability. It's a bad dog, but he assumed the risk. So is the neighbor likely to prevail? No, because he assumed the risk. It didn't say that, but I know because I spent an extra 40 seconds in the facts. And now what's the payoff? I know what I'm looking for. Now, stay with me. I know some of you already like to cheat and you want to go ahead and look at the answers to see how smart you are, but stay with me. Take a look at answer choice A. Notice that A does not say no because he assumed the risk. But notice how they're using the plain English to basically say, take a look at B. Now, here's the bar exam right here. If you were writing an essay based on this hypo, would trespass be an issue you would clearly argue? Yes. But what am I going to tell you now? What the bleep does trespass have to do with strict liability / assumption of the risk? Absolutely nothing. What do you do with your mechanical pencil when you know that B is wrong because it's referring to a separate issue? Whoosh, cross it off. Cross it off. Get it at, I know some of you like to put the little star next to it. I'll come back to it. The only thing you're coming back to is the convention center. Okay? Come on, stay with me. I know it's just a joke. Take it easy. Trespass has nothing to do with strict liability. Don't even think about it. C. Invitee. When do I care if someone's an invitee or a licensee? Duty of care. That's negligence. What the bleep do I care about negligence if I'm doing a strict liability? D. That would have looked good, John. Nice, juicy definition language there. The other version of strict life. Notice B, C, and D all gave you nice, juicy buzzwords to chew on. What was the correct and most specific answer to the facts? A. Nowhere in the facts or the call or the answers did it say the terms strict liability or assume the risk. That's slowing down in the facts. That's knowing what you're looking for. What is each answer about? Shut up and pick it, and they give you the question on a silver platter. But most of the country is choosing between those other buzzwords. People don't like A. You want to love A. You want to hug A because it's going to give you a law license. That's what it's going to do. Now, is sometimes the correct answer going to be the definition? Yes, of course. I just want you to be more focused in the facts so you know when to pick it, but more importantly, when it's not the correct answer. Issue spotting, dumbing it down. I'm going to say this also at the end, but I also just don't want to forget. And as you know, if you know a little bit about me from other stuff, lectures, the last thing I like to feel like is a used car salesman, but I also we're trying to help you. So if any of this stuff begins to click and maybe you need more detail in terms of approach, what you should be doing, there is a standalone video on AdaptiBar on the video page called Mastering the MBE. It's not substantive with the topics, There's a separate standalone video called Mastering the MBE, which is me for about an hour and 15 minutes going into a lot more detail of this approach, reading comp, what you should be doing first, second, third. So if you feel that maybe oh, I wasn't really looking at it like this, you may want to check out that video separate from the topics. If you're okay with the law, this is all just approach and a more detailed approach as to what we're trying to talk about. So just again, wanted to give you that heads up. If after later you want to follow up with more detail, check out the Mastering the MBE video on the video page. Okay, let's try another question and see if we can gain some consistency in what we're trying to show you about the issue vis-a-vis the difference in the answer choices. I know I could hear screaming all across the country. Property, John, take it easy. Remember, every question is just testing you on a definition. The longer and denser the facts are, the easier the answer is going to be. Because what are they really doing? They're just hiding the words or the phrases right there in the facts. When you see something like this with numbers, what do you want to do? You just want to skim it and get to the bottom. But look at the call of the question. Is the man liable to the bank for the deficiency? So even if you know deficiency may have something to do with mortgage, you don't really know what particular rule or what happened in the facts. Then you look at those answer choices, and especially for property, they can be scary. You don't want to be thinking about four things. You want to focus on the one. Do me a favor and take a moment and read the fact pattern to number 8. Okay? So I'm always saying denser, longer topics you don't like, don't bail on the facts. This is right here why you want to go, you invest all your time in the facts so you know what you're looking for. Because when people also talk about the time problem, you skim this and stare at the answer choices, you don't know what you're looking for. You either just stare at four things and make a ridiculous guess, or what's the worst thing you do? You go back to the facts and reread it 2 or 3 times. Now, consciously or subconsciously, you're going to create more ideas in your head, which is the worst thing you want to do. I see a mortgage question. I see someone buying the land. What should I be thinking about? If I buy your property and you have a mortgage on the land, what do I know I need to be thinking about? Did I assume the mortgage? Did I take subject to the mortgage? Who's responsible for the mortgage payment? Okay. And if you assume the mortgage, you're primarily liable. Can they always go after the first person? Yes, unless they execute a novation, which is a release from all liability. Yes. You with me? Most of the time, you take subject to the mortgage. Yes. Yes. And that means I could buy your land, but I'm not liable for the payment. Good. Here, did this guy assume or take subject to the mortgage? Well, it specifically told me on the third line, the man paid the woman 50,000 in cash and specifically assumed the mortgage note. So what do I now know? The man is going to be personally liable. It's his responsibility. If he doesn't pay, could they potentially go after the woman? Yeah. But then what did they actually say, which they don't usually do? Did the bank release the woman? Yes. So who's left to be on the hook? Him. He assumed the mortgage. He is now primarily liable. And you know he's primarily liable because they told you exactly. Normally, the woman would be secondarily liable, but is she? No, because she's out. But just because she's out, does that take away his responsibility? No, because he assumed, and you know because they told you, which means you now know what answer you're looking for. Take a look at the answer choices. Notice A, talks about the facts, but is that the issue? No. B, now, this is why I'm also talking about where I said a couple of weeks ago we did the first webinar, and I said if you miss when you miss a question, the first thing you want to be asking yourself is, did I forget that rule, or I knew the rule but I missed the word, I missed the reading. So sometimes, especially something like property, just being honest and transparent, you could have forgotten. What's that difference between the assume and the subject to? I forgot. Okay, no problem. If you realize that you didn't remember or what a novation is, that's why I think I missed this question. Okay, now you know I got to go back to my notes and shove that rule back in my head. No problem. The key is to recognize what rules you're beginning to forget or confuse so you catch it now. But the key here is B is trying to get you to focus on the woman, and therefore it would be releasing the man. But that's not the rule. Take a look at C. Redemption, that's about paying off what you owe to stop foreclosure. That has nothing to do with this. Take a look at D. Is D basically saying what you were looking for? Yes. So notice you got B and you got D. Opposite conclusions. Opposite conclusions. How would I know? What did the facts tell me? Always focus. Now, again, I'm always talking about the time because you're worried about the time. The 1.8 minutes you proverbially have is about a minute and 50 seconds, give or take. These are all examples to me. The one with the tort one we just did with the dog. If you spend a minute and 20 seconds, which would be a lot of time for that one, and I just made sure I knew what they told me, you'd be out of the answers in 3 seconds. If you spent a minute and 40 seconds with this, just kind of walking through, oh, assume, I see, when they give me the mortgage, I'm looking for those words. Okay, it may take me a little while, John. So what? You take as much time as you feel you need to make sure you see, because then once you go into the answers, look how fast you can eliminate A, B, and C because you knew you were looking for D. The time is in the facts that allows you to get out of the answers much faster, and you're going to be more accurate. You're literally going to get more questions right. And if you forgot the rule, go back to your outline and put the rule back in your head. You knew the rule, but you read too fast. You're skimming. How many times have you done that? At the 9 o'clock at night, why I say don't try to steal those questions too early in the morning or too late at night. Because what's happening? You're just skimming and you're developing bad reading habits. Good. Property questions, all these questions, just testing you on a definition. Don't be intimidated. Let's try another one. Crim law. Okay. Now, stay with me. Take a look at the call of the question here. Murder. See, they told me, John. That's why I like to look. I didn't tell you not to. The first two, though, didn't tell you anything. Here, it says murder. But what's the problem with that? If you know your law, at common law, how many ways could you commit murder? 4. It doesn't specify if this is intent to kill, intent to inflict serious bodily harm, felony murder, or depraved heart murder. So even when they give me the name, I still really don't know. And that's why I need the facts. The DA wannabes like to pick guilty, and the PD people like to pick not guilty because that's what you like. And that's why even the people who know a lot about a subject sometimes do worse in that subject. But I know it's murder. What do I gain from that I didn't gain from the first two? When I know the name and I know it's murder, burglary, negligence, impeachment, whatever the case may be, if they're telling me the name of the issue, what does that tell me here? At least I know that my answer has to only be about that. But take a look at the facts because I still need to know which murder they were talking about. Take a look at that hypo. So, how did this guy act? The president? This wasn't intent to kill. Just as a quick law tip. Never infer intent. Make them tell you. If this was an essay, you always could argue, how did the guy act? Recklessly, right? Because what does reckless mean? He knew or, excellent, should have known that somebody could die and he distributed anyway. Reckless is important because that's the phrase for depraved heart murder. Exactly. And by the way, just also as a bar tip, what is the synonym word for recklessness? Whether you're doing a tort question, a criminal law question, anything, excellent. Malice malicious. Malice malicious is the same as reckless recklessness. So when you see those answer choices, those are interchangeable words if you know what you're looking for. So again, it's a murder question. I did get that from the question. In the facts, I knew now that it has to be one of these four because they made it a murder question. Stick to the issue. What did the facts tell me? He knew there was a large likelihood, a strong likelihood that something bad could happen. He knew or should have known that this could happen, and he did it anyway. Second, take a look at A by itself, please. What the bleep does that have to do with murder? Absolutely nothing. What does A mean? I have no idea. How does it relate to strict criminal liability? Total garbage. Don't make every answer choice into an important answer choice. That's why the mantra, there's three good answers, you have to find the best one. That's ridiculous. You're giving too much credit to too many answer choices. You want to go down there and know what you're looking for. A, whoosh, B. Does B have the good word there? Recklessness, reckless. C, what is C about? Garbage. D, now, stay with me. Here's the bar exam right here. This is the getting it down to two. This is the contrasting of the answer choices, okay? You could see if you were here or doing this, you're on your own. A and C are stupid. You instinctively and practically knew that. Listen to me. D, proximate cause. When do I care about proximate cause? Negligence. What crime do they want me to be thinking about if I act negligently and cause a death? Manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter. And what the bleep does involuntary manslaughter have to do with murder? Absolutely nothing. Always contrast the answer choices. You have a reckless answer, you have a negligence answer. That's a murder answer, that's a manslaughter answer. Keep everything separate. This is the payoff of knowing what you're looking for because you're going to be more aggressive as to why the other answers are wrong. I got B, thank you. I got D, out because I know my definition. So if you were staring at B and D and you said, yeah, I can't believe, what's that reckless, negligent, which one's which again? Okay, that's a law problem. Okay, so you go back into your notes, you shove the definition back in your head, no problem. If it's, I knew that, I read too fast. I didn't think it was reckless, John. Remember, when you do a question, any question, and your explanation in your own head is, or you speak to your coach, a bar prep person, someone like me, anybody. John, I thought, to me, John, I didn't think. Don't use that word. I'm being facetious, but there's no thinking. Okay, even if you didn't think it was reckless, who cares? Did they make it a murder question? Yes. Therefore, are you obligated, required to pick the answer referring to one of the murders? Yes. Whether you agree with it or whether you like it. That's my point. Shut up and pick it. I said before we did the questions, you're going to disagree with many of the answer choices. I agree with you. That's stupid. Shut up and pick it anyway. They're trying to get in your head. Don't let them in your head because once they're in there, it's very difficult to get them out. That's why I say to my repeat takers, you know what I'm talking about. The doubt, the second guessing. Well, maybe, I guess I don't know what to do. No. Murder, reckless, shut up and pick it. It can't be D, even if I don't like it. Connect the dots. They made it a murder question. My answer has to be about that. They made it about a dog injuring someone. That's strict liability, and he assumed the risk. I got to pick the only answer even remotely talking about it. They told me he assumed the mortgage. There's only one answer saying the man's responsible. Shut up and pick it. but that comes from issue spotting, knowing my black letter law, and making sure that most of my time is spent in the facts, not getting it down and going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Let's do another one while we're on a roll now. Con law. Notice the call of the question. Is the law constitutional? No, no, yes, yes. Gee, that helps, John. But I don't need to know that now, John. I'm going to go back in the facts and dumb the whole thing down. Take a look at the three-line fact pattern, please. Okay? I have a state law. Whenever they give you a statute, whether it's state, federal, sometimes, they give you both, you get a statute, always be asking, what is the government doing? What's the theme? How do you know the issue? Because the call of the question just says the constitutional. What is the government doing? Dumb it down into plain English. What's happening here? They're prohibiting any barbershop license to display posters in support of any candidate for the public or any distribution, any display. No other kind of da-da-da. What is the issue here clearly? Speech, right? First Amendment. First Amendment. The first thing you do when you see a First Amendment question is say, is this content based? Is it content neutral? Right? What's the statute about? Are they stopping the message from getting out, or are they giving them another place, another time, another way to display? The statute bluntly says you can't. Anyway, content based. The facts tell you. What do I know? Law. Content-based regulation equals what level of scrutiny? Strict scrutiny. State has the burden to show that it's necessary to achieve a compelling interest. I know all that here before I look at the answers. Why? Because I slow down to spot the issue. It's First Amendment, content-based versus content neutral. And yes, you guys know for the speech, for the First Amendment, there are some very, very specific other rules, like, obscenity, the fighting words, the unprotected speech, the public, the non-public. There are some very particular little hypos. You're just trying over July to get comfortable with what they look like, because I'm always saying when they're testing you on those very particular rules, the fact patterns will be quite obvious. The broad approach for First Amendment is it content based? Is it content neutral? They can't do anything. Now, 50 or 100 questions later, you may get a hypo that says, that looks like this, and it says, you can't display the posters of any current, da 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 da, comma, but you can do it for 3 hours over there. You with me? This is again where they begin to look the same, and it looks like it's going to be the same hypo, and they change the sentence ever so slightly. That's not a trick. That's your bad reading. That's why I'm saying acknowledge and know that they're going to be doing that, whether it's the practice questions and on the bar. Because if you do all the AdaptiBar questions, people think, well, if I do all of them, they can't ask me anything I've ever seen before. If you do all the questions correctly, you're going to be very familiar with the general variations of how they test all this stuff. I agree with you. You just don't know which version you're going to get on exam day. That's why I keep saying you want to peak with your reading on exam day, and you're going in there focusing and using these practice questions, not to just try to make a screenshot and memorize every hypo in your head, because you can't do that. Okay, I see what they're doing. They're basically giving me the same issue. They're just changing the story ever so slightly. And the more sharper and confident you get with that patience in the facts and your ability to see which one, the easier the answer is going to be. Content-based, strict scrutiny, take a look at A. Take a look at B. Take a look at C. D. What's the correct answer? Be beautiful. Strict scrutiny, compelling state interest. Even if you don't think it does serve a compelling state interest, you don't agree with the answer, shut up and pick it. Look how irrelevant and stupid the other answers are. This is called knowing what you're looking for from taking an extra 50 seconds. Not that you need it, but I'm just being generous. You need to review your rule. Look how short this hypo is. You got plenty of time to wait a minute. Let me see what's going on here. The minute they lure you down there and looking at all that wordy garbage down there, the more you're thinking. You don't want to think. You want to have the rule, tip of your tongue, know what you're looking for, connect the dots, shut up and pick it. Extra time up here, less time in the answer choice. Let's try another one. Okay. Now, so here's again the other version. Take a look here at the bottom, Civ Pro. At the close of the evidence, both parties move for judgment as a matter of law. How should the court rule? So here's another example. They told you it was judgment as a matter of law. And many of the Civ Pro questions, as you know, they're either giving you the name of the motion or whether it's subject matter or personal. So again, like the murder question, sometimes you'll get the name, but you don't know what the facts say, so you don't know what answer you're looking for. What's the rule for judgment as a matter of law? Would a reasonable jury have enough evidence to find for that party? Is there enough evidence for a jury to find for the party? Take a look at the little 2.5 line fact pattern. So the guy goes in the tavern. He gets injured and he sues the tavern. Correct? Good. What would he sue the tavern for? Negligence. Doesn't say, but again, issue spawn. There was an accident. You get my point. Is the tavern negligent? What do the facts say? They're both looking for the judgment as a matter of law. Is there enough evidence that the tavern was negligent? No. Was this guy just an idiot? Yes. You with me? Use the facts, not the answer choices. I'll get to the answer choices. From the facts, it's negligence. Judgment is a matter of law. Is there any evidence the tavern was negligent? No, they didn't do anything wrong. This guy was just an idiot. Now I'm going into the answers and I'm saying, okay, judgment is a matter of law. The standard has to be, is there enough evidence? Would a jury have enough evidence? No, the tavern didn't do anything wrong. Now, what else do I want to talk about? Summary judgment gets confused with this, just like manslaughter gets confused with murder. Hmm? So, but what's the standard for summary judgment? No genuine dispute, excellent, of material fact. Looks the same, two different motions. If at this time of year you're starting to get a little confused, that's where you go back to the law and you shove the law back in your head. You knew the law. Okay, I know there's a lot of Civ Pro aficionados out there that love this stuff. God bless you. Okay, you knew the rule. Don't run. Make sure you see what the facts say. So I'm going into the answers now saying, no, there's no evidence that the tavern did anything wrong. There's no negligence on the part of the tavern. Take a look at A. B. C. D. What's the correct answer? Got it, John. C. There's no evidence that the tavern breached a duty. Negligence, breach of duty, there's no evidence. You with me? You go down to those answers too fast. Yes, it's totally transparent. It is the only answer that talks about there's no evidence. But you never know if there would have been another answer worded differently that also could have been right if they changed the facts ever so slightly. That's why, again, I believe very, very strongly in what they call in sports and playing an instrument, what they call muscle memory. You do the same thing thousands of times, then under pressure, that's how your body will react, right? The athletes do it, you're doing it with their body, you're doing it for your brain. You want the same system every single question. Facts in the call, what's the issue? What did the facts say? What answer am I looking for? What is each answer about? They do begin to look the same. But I got to be more careful because they just can change 10, 20, or 50 of them, and all of a sudden I'm in the wrong place. More time in the facts so I know what I'm looking for. You skim to look, now you're missing all these keywords and phrases. The more you're looking at these words, the more comfortable you get seeing these words, the faster you're going to get out of the answer choices. This is why I'm always telling people, you don't worry about finishing, you want to get more correct, but I promise you, if you get more comfortable with the facts, not only are you going to finish early, you're going to get more of the questions correct. That's the point. This is all about the issue spotting. So we've done a couple where it told you murder, told you judgment is a matter of law. Then we did a couple that didn't tell you anything. Even when they tell you, I need the facts. If they don't tell you, I certainly need the facts. Use the facts, slow down so you know what you're looking for. So if you know the law really well, but you feel I'm still in the low 60s, I'm in the high 50s, sometimes I'm at 70, John, sometimes I'm at 50, then it usually means your reading is erratic. And sometimes that changes for the subject, better in tort, terrible in contracts, etc. Be honest with yourself. This is the time of year to say, wait a minute, Is it the rule? And this is where I'm always talking about, like I said a few weeks, even if when you finish your 7 topics, you take your practice test, if you're doing the course, you're doing your own thing, you finished your review, every day moving forward in July, I recommend you pick a random MBE topic, just a random one, and you regurgitate rules, random rules from that topic from the moment you get up till the moment you go to sleep. That plus the practice will really lock in. So when you see these words in the answer choices, if you're constantly saying reckless, negligent, you're constantly abnormally dangerous, no evidence, you get my book, assume, take subject to, the more you're regurgitating those words, the more they will bounce off the answer choices like neon sign in Times Square. If you're not sure what they are or you haven't spotted them in the facts, you're just looking at 4 answer choices, and that's why you're doing tons of questions, but your number is not moving in the right direction, or it's very erratic. You're bad at a particular subject, you're doing really better at a couple are lower. Again, ask yourself, do I really need to stop the property questions for a couple of days and go back and put some, yeah, I didn't remember the assuming the mortgage question. If I didn't remember that rule, maybe there's a couple other rules. Then give yourself a couple of days to get better with the law, then go try some questions, and you'll probably see a difference. You feel like you know the law, you're usually reading a little too quick, getting into the answers too quick, hemming and hawing between these two. And if you do get it down to 2, what's the first thing you ask yourself? What's the issue? Why am I looking at these two? What are these two about? Even if you, so if you don't know, and it's yes, no, guilty, not guilty, you clearly don't know the issue. If you do know it's a murder question, it's a burglary question, it's a trespass question, whatever it is, I know the issue. They told me or identified it, and I still get it down to 2, they will always be coming to different conclusions. If I get it down to the 2 yeses, the 2 guilties, the 2 constitutionals, the 2 that come to the same conclusion will always be discussing separate issues. That's why the issue spotting is the most important thing, and that's why I'm always talking about what is the issue. A shocking number of people do thousands of questions and didn't identify the issue. Then they tell me, I'm not really good with issue spotting. Of course you are. That's how you got through school. The difference is on your final exam on your essay, you had to spot 10 issues. Now on MBE, you're looking for the one, but you're not looking for the one down in the answer choices. And just because they may tell you it occasionally in the question doesn't mean you know whether I'm liable, guilty, etc. Again, facts, facts, facts. Get the confidence you can identify more up there so you know what you're looking for. Always be asking what is each answer about so you can connect those dots. Quality reading, quality rules. Always be doing a little bit of that recitation as you're practicing, and the combination will lock in more of these buzzwords so you will identify them in the answer choices. Speed is your enemy, accuracy is your friend. The more you practice the right way, you will get faster over the month of July. Yes, like any other skill, because you don't think so much and you're just reacting because, again, that brain muscle memory is beginning to kick in. Read the questions carefully and slowly. Have a good rhyme and reason why you're looking for your answer. And then what is the most important thing? Shut up and pick it. Check out that Mastering the MBE video. If anything I said today clicked and made you maybe think about some of these different. If you're still feeling like you're inconsistent, that has more detail. If this lit up something in your brain and now you see what you might be doing wrong, apply what we said today. Give it a look on some questions. Do them nice and slow for a day or 2 to kind of make sure you're applying everything I'm saying, and then let the speed kick in. Don't go too fast now. Speed will kick in by the end of July. We're going to be together again in a few weeks with some last minute tips and strategies and approach for the last couple of weeks and for the exam itself. So I hope you'll visit me back in a couple of weeks. Make your practice quality, careful, and always know what you're looking for so you can shut up and pick it. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Stay confident and stay aggressive. We'll see you soon.